Welcome back. Good morning, Marita.
Good morning. Hello.
Today we are going to talk about the topics of ceremonies, rituals, and circles, and the differences, the requirement, what's needed, and terms that are used a lot in the spiritual community, and that often are not connected to really the ancient definition and what it really means. So
Yeah.
we use ceremony for something that maybe is not, or maybe we should use other terms. And we thought it was important to share about that.
Yeah. I've found as I've been teaching over the past, 5, 6 years that it's been important to start to define things because if it not, it just becomes jargon, right? And we have these cognitive biases of like, oh, you're saying the same thing, so I understand. And it's just good to define things and know that definitions change within culture and within tradition, right? So again, whenever I'm speaking from an Indigenous perspective of specific cultures, including, the traditions that I was born into and trained and the traditions I've been trained. So I can't speak from outside of those cultures, so we all can come to the table with our working definitions, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also important, and I wanted to discuss that with you about differentiating, what we do on our own in the privacy of our home, of our
Yeah.
bedroom, things that we do in the morning and things that we hold for ourselves, and when it comes to bringing it out there in circles or with others, and then maybe
Yeah.
even talking about it. How do we share about it? Do we talk about it? Social media
Yeah.
and things like that, because there are many layers from the very private experience to what's now very public and very broad and distributed through social media and other ways. So ceremonies, rituals, circles. Can you share a little bit about,
Yeah.
for you, the definition or some aspect of it?
Yeah, I'd like to start with ritual and then work our way up to ceremony because ritual is kind of the most personal. And I think you said something really important, and um, and that is our how we live life these days, which means we believe that our personal life is not private, right? And so ritual is a call to privacy, right? Ritual is a call for you to be doing your work in secret, and yet there's people posting all the time about the things that they're doing or the which go ahead and share steps of a ritual. But of course, you always want to have that privacy to be able to do it in the spaces, in the places that are part of your ecosystem. And I highly recommend never showing, pictures of the altar that you built for your ritual because that's private. It's supposed to be private. And so I think a call to ritual is a call to return back to the sacredness of having privacy, of being with the ritual itself, which will always call for different elements. Circles is when you start to get into public spaces, right? And you can invite people. And circles sometimes are held differently, sometimes they're held by multiple people, multiple leaders, or there is this idea of a circleness being able to be a place where you actually meet in a circle, right? Sit in that circle, and you're allowing for different perspectives. It's a place of witnessing, and it takes less level of training and leadership than what we would call ceremony. Ceremony is something that, in the traditions I come from, you train your whole life for, and there's very specific steps of traditional ancestral ceremonies, as well as the new ceremonies being woven. And the new ceremonies being woven by the people of our age come with permission from the elders, come with a lot of conversation with the elders of how to do things, how to weave things so that energetically everything is prepared. So uh, the higher quote unquote level you go, the more responsibility that you have. And in the circles and traditions I've been taught, the higher you go, the less it's about you. And that's a huge, I think, challenge for people. They think that to be a leader in an Indigenous circle means it's about you. And what I teach all my students, it's never about you. It's never about you. If you step into a quote unquote leadership role of a circle or a ceremony, specifically, it is not about you. It is about the relationships. You are just an ambassador, right? You're an ambassador to that. And so there's a huge disconnect, I think, with what's going out there, with what people are calling ceremonies, which are three ring circuses of events. They're events, they're about having an experience. The Disneyland of Indigenous circles has become a thing, and you have different people doing different things. And that's events, that's something even different. So I think it's important to just, again, go to anything, but know what the responsibilities are, I think, to step into those and ask questions. The most important thing, I think, is to ask questions when you're attending said events or said circles or said ceremonies. Ask them, is it traditional? Is it ancestral? Is it from a lineage? Get curious. Just because it says an Indigenous something doesn't mean they have permission. It doesn't mean that they have been taught, So I always tell people, get curious, and the people that I teach, I always tell them, let people know that you have permission. Because when you say that, right, and you honor the permissions that you have and the trainings that you've had, the time that you've taken, and those ancestors, right, those teachers show up to help and to support.
Mm.
And when it's not about you, right, you want everyone supporting you, all of the elements and the ancestors to help. So that's that in a nutshell. What
Uh,
about you?
yeah, I like that. I find in me, example that I learned specific ceremonies. Spend 15, 20 years now going to Peru and running a certain set for certain ceremonies. And then, was offering the ceremonies. And then I discovered that some people that attended or some people that were students, they kind of cherry pick into aspect of the ceremonies and then introduce in there either other traditions that had nothing to do with that or just their own personal taste, their own rituals, their own way of doing things, and feeling that that was the right thing to do. Many people say, well, ceremonies sometimes there's a lot of restrictions, there's a lot of rules, and we want to be free and I'm different, and then we end up with this mismatched experience that lose its power, because when we are in ceremony and when we are working with a lineage, we're not just working with our teacher, we're working with our teacher teachers and teacher teachers. There's a whole lineage of ancestors that are present in the circle, and that includes humans and non-humans that know this ceremony because it's ancestral, because it's been done for thousands of years. And there is a power in ceremony because of the rules, because of the container, because of the way things are done. And unless you've worked for pretty much your whole life with that, and maybe you get permission from another grandfather or grandmother that say, hey, we're getting the message to change this. And maybe there are variations over time. Obviously, over centuries, ceremonies have evolved. You can't really change it, because you're not just dishonoring your teachers or the person you learn from, but you're dishonoring a whole lineage of people. And for me, I see it very much as a chain with links, right? So when you break that chains, you're not just breaking that link, you're breaking the whole chain that came before you. And my teacher a long time ago said, the why we're doing it that way and why I'm so strict on you learning exactly that way, it's because you have no right to change what has been done for 1,000 years. And plus, we want this to be transmitted for 1,000 more years. And if you change something and you don't explain why, or you don't know why you are changing it, people down the line in one generation, two generations, well, are going to lose what we took so much efforts, and often we've been oppressed, by to do our ceremony. You're basically saying all what we did, doesn't mean anything. So there's something really important in maintaining the sacredness, which is maintaining the honoring, maintaining the reciprocity, maintaining the lineage, right? Now, yeah, if you step into and say, I'm going to offer a gathering, a circle where we are going to share, I don't know, cacao together, or we are going to share drums singing together, or we are going to sit around the fire and do some prayers, and it's presented that way, then it's okay. You can do whatever you want in your personal home or in your personal space. The way you pray and how you do things is really yours. I
Mhm.
still believe, it's great to have a lineage and it's great to know why we do things. But yes, sometimes my ritual are going to shift. But when I step as a teacher, when I step as holder of ceremony, I make sure, I am to the dot, to the detail, exactly aligned with what I learned from my teacher, because he learned it from his teacher, that learned it from his teacher. And I want to make sure that in 7 generations from now, I was not the one responsible for breaking that, because that's a huge responsibility. Um, so that's how already I see it. And often we use the term ceremony, and like you say, it depends of the culture and depend of the context, but it's not really based on a lineage. And for me, that's what usually gets challenging, because like you say, you should ask and say, okay, do you have teachers? Do you have a lineage that you refer to? Do you have permission even to share
Yeah.
those ceremonies? I remember sitting in South Dakota with Lakota elders, and we were doing a very specific ceremony in the Black Hills. And one of the grandmother, so it was more of a circle first, and we were sharing, and she was sharing, certain stories, certain cosmology, part of their cosmology. And at some point she said, the next story I'm going to share cannot leave that circle. This story cannot be repeated out of that circle, right? There
Mhm.
were stories I said, yeah, you can share that, but certain are not. And by the way, that story can only be shared today on this calendar day, because of
Mhm.
this alignment with stars, because of the season. And this story can only be shared in the evening, not in the morning. And if we, don't know, we might take this story out of context, and it will lose its power because it's not held in sacredness anymore. So not only, we're not going to experience probably the power of that story, but we impacting people that are using that story, that are using those ways in the right way. We are connected, and it's like opening a leak into this energy space. And very often we're not conscious of that. We're not aware that what we're doing is going to impact also other people that are trying to maintain certain traditions. So we have to be very, very careful with that, I think.
Yeah. Like we said, it's not about you, it's about that community space. It's about those generations, and so and it's a step, way an opportunity to step into what I call an alternative reality, really, because it's a different way of being, and a different way of being is means a different way of doing things, different relationships. So I hope that people can continue to explore spaces, ask questions, be curious, and find ways to, learn from lineage holders and keepers or people who have permission, and I think you said something really important, like there's a time and a place for everything. There's a time and a place for everything. And a lot of that is taken into consideration, when you ask an elder for a ceremony, they'll be like, it's not time yet. No, I want it now. I'm here now. No, 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 we got to wait, because there's a lot involved. There's a lot of relationships involved, especially non-human, that will hold and can hold that container, so that all can participate, human and non-human. And I think this is an invitation to start to be curious, and about how people are using language, and find your way in as you sit in circles, rituals, and ceremonies. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank
Beautiful.
you, everyone. And we'll probably come back to that theme again and again because there is more to say about it.
Definitely.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.